Is this bombshell whistleblower complaint rocking the Trump DOJ and administration? It alleges a top Trump official said the DOJ could plot to tell the courts F you and ignore judicial orders that the president didn't like, which is what happens in autocratic regime. This is a new, damning account of an assault on the rule of law. It comes from a very solid source, a longtime DOJ attorney who was in the room, who worked directly for these Trump appointees, who witnessed them first-hand knowledge. Strong, and this individual recounts how his refusal to lie led him to be later ousted. The source is a detailed, meticulous complaint. This is not one quote or one interview. It is now a formal process, not unlike other whistleblowers that we've covered throughout many decades in American life. And whistleblowers, even in this current Trump era, even if he didn't like it and wants it to be otherwise, are legally protected. Indeed, that's one of the reasons this is news tonight, which we'll get into, because the written complaint has been provided to Congress and the public, and it's leading to these kind of bombshell New York Times headlines. Justice Department leader suggested violating court orders, whistleblower says. The confession here is from the top of the Justice Department. The now fired DOJ lawyer, Erez Raveni, writing about this with the emails and documents, contemporaneous accounts, as the lawyers say, to back him up. So while some people might have thought this is where Trump wanted to go or assumed his senior aides were trying to do this at DOJ, I can tell you, as a lawyer, as a legal journalist, as someone following this all these times, all these months, this is the most damning inside account that they did deliberately want to violate court orders, according to the whistleblower. Comes down to a senior Justice Department official, Emil Bove, also a former Trump criminal defense lawyer, who told subordinates that he would, in this clash, potentially ignore these court orders to get whatever Trump wanted. Judges be damned. The Constitution be damned. And that means, in the end, democracy and the rule of law be damned. Because everything we do as a country, and one thing that's always separated the United States from many other less democratic countries, is that the rule of law holds. That's why when there are disputes, like a famous one you've heard of, Bush v. Gore, and the election didn't resolve it necessarily clearly, instead of turning to violence in the streets or a military coup, which is quite common in many countries, when the Supreme Court rules, people followed it. That included the people who benefited, say in that case, Bush, but also everyone, half the country, who didn't benefit, who wanted the other side, people supporting Gore. That was a quarter century ago, 25 years ago. We didn't have big open questions about whether the government would follow the rules and the law, whether the court order would be followed, and whether there'd be violence. Tonight, I'm telling you, not to alarm you, but to make sure you understand what's happening out there, that is not so certain under these Trump officials. Some of them seeking even more power after now being busted today for admitting their view is FU. Now, in the immigration clash where Bove reportedly said this, quote, DOJ would need to consider telling the courts F you, and he said the whole thing, and ignore any such court order. I'm going to show you more of these details because the whistleblower recounts that then the others in the room, some longtime DOJ officials, some who might be sympathetic to Trump's deportation goals, quote, looked stunned, and they observed awkward, nervous glances among people in the room. Silence overtook the room. That's the senior DOJ official telling DOJ lawyers, ignore the rule of law and the orders if you need to, and to put a little extra on it, F you to the courts, to the judge. Now, this was a key part of the Trump administration's deportation agenda, which everyone can see is one of the places where they want to do the most quickly, but also are testing legal power, saying we're at war, saying there's rebellion or invasion, and apparently saying if they don't get what they want, well, they've got some people in place who'll get there however they need to. You see the then defendant Trump flanked by this person. It's very controversial that Trump has put in so many individuals who were part of his personal legal team to run the country, and the allegation, the whistleblower complaint, is that's not working out very well. That same individual's up for a big judgeship nominated by Trump. This is a clue to the kind of people that Trump wants on the courts. Whether he would want his own orders disobeyed if he got in there is a separate question, but of course, the whole point is they want to control this in a way where there are no actual binding court orders against them. And if they stack the courts, then they don't have to worry about that. And that's the whistleblower's contention, that this is lawless. Now, we're talking about whether they're going to get somewhere ending the rule of law or breaking the Constitution to get autocratic results any which way they want. You should recall Trump actually lost the key SCOTUS round in this case at the center of the whistleblower's account. And the Trump administration has been under scrutiny exactly along these lines. We've heard a more sanitized or kind of vague version of this, not with an FU, mind you. But what's important is today's evidence adds to the view, the very damning account, that there has been a coordinated strategy from the top to soften up, chip away at the rule of law and the courts in this country so that someday they may just ignore them entirely.
I believe there was a court order that upheld, which has now been, I think, correctly repudiated by virtually everyone, a court order that upheld the internment of Japanese civilians in internment camps during.
As bad as it was, that court order was followed, was it not?
And I just wonder whether some historians might think we'd be better off if it hadn't been followed.
That's what it sounds like on the record. That's a top Trump lawyer as well, who's at DOJ, saying, I wonder if it'd be better not to follow. Now we're learning, when you match that up behind the scenes, other DOJ officials at the top, which Trump is now trying to promote, are saying, yeah, F you, that's exactly what we wanted. When sometimes people say, is it alarmist to talk about autocratic instincts in the Trump administration? The problem is alarmist misses the whole issue. They're the ones admitting it and saying it. It's almost like their defenders want to wish or pretend they don't admit that the plan is to not follow court orders you don't like. Now, this whistleblower says his boss asked him effectively to lie, and he had to choose between what was basically an unlawful instruction and what normally judges and lawyers could be disbarred for, right? Committing perjury in court, risking his job or more, and he chose to take the risk. It's a bombshell allegation, a blatant discussion of defying court orders. If this proves to be true, and the lawyer here has written it down on good faith after being ousted, taking great personal risk, this is what we call a pretty credible account, then you can't put this up on your screen or on the internet enough for people to understand that the autocratic threat is admitted, an FU to court oversight. And if the administration can get away with this, let me be clear with you tonight, it's bigger than an immigration case or policies. It is how you plot to end the rule of law. Judges are supposed to be the backstop. We hear about that on a ton of issues. Where can the National Guard go? What are the war powers? Are some immigrants being mistreated in a way where they need to be better provided due process? But if they end judicial oversight completely, well, you won't have elections and democracy itself. I'm joined by Andrew Weissmann, a longtime DOJ vet, FBI general counsel, prosecutor. How do you view the significance and the credibility of this whistleblower account?
Sure. Well, if the whistleblower is to be believed, it is what you are saying, which is this is an insider account of the end of the rule of law. I mean, there's no two ways to sugarcoat this. I want to make sure people understand who this whistleblower is. Mm-hmm. This is not some political hack or disgruntled employee. This is somebody who was at the department for 15 years. He was in the immigration field. He was most recently promoted to his position and lauded by the Trump administration itself. And he takes pains to point out that he supported and advocated in court many policies that I think a lot of your viewers would find deplorable. In other words, he was one of the people who defended the so-called Muslim ban in the Trump 1.0 administration. So he is no sort of, lily-livered, MSNBC, Democrat, whatever, epithet somebody wants to call him. And he recounts that Stephen Miller has used those epithets in disparaging him. This is somebody who is a true insider, and he ends his 35-page complaint by saying, I didn't sign up to lie. Mm-hmm. And he recounts over and over again ways in which numerous cases in which judges are holding contempt proceedings currently, he recounts how this administration either made false statements or decided, as you noted in fairly vulgar language, decided to just not comply with court orders. Many of my colleagues who are, sort of career Republicans, career Democrats who serve in the Department of Justice would be equally appalled at that. This is not a partisan issue. You do not react to the courts that way because at the end of the day, it's not just the rule of law. There are people whose lives were affected. There are people who were removed in violation of court order, who were extracted, whose rights were violated. Remember, the Supreme Court determined 9-0 that the due process rights of the people in El Salvador were extracted by the Trump administration, were violated. That is what this whistleblower is getting at, is the inside story of how that happened and his efforts to get the administration to comply with the law.